So today's workshop is all about strategies for a strong research essay. And the reason that we're working on this right now is because it may seem like it's far away, but you do have a pretty major research essay due June 2nd. And there are some things that you're going to want to be aware of, thinking about as you're preparing for this essay, because kind of the last element of the essay is the writing. There's a lot of other things that are going to be happening before that. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. Oh, does someone have a question? No? Okay. So the topics that we're going to talk about today are focused mainly on that research essay, the essay 5 one. That's called the My City Problem Solution Essay. But there's also some things that you're going to notice are relatable to your current essay that you're working on, that trash research project, and that's due in a few days. So that's something towards the end that we're going to really focus on. That Professor Dagan wanted me to kind of talk to you about and make sure that you include in that final draft that you're submitting. But before that, let's just go over what we're going to be reviewing. So we're going to be talking about how to read text carefully and critically and take notes that will be easy to access later. And that's specific to a reading that you need to do for the research projects. So we're going to talk about how you want to read that book with your essay in mind. And then we're going to focus on finding the right research that will support your argument. I know you've thought about this before, you've done a little bit about it before, but now we're really diving into some heavy research. So we're really going to talk about how you find which sources are actually going to be helpful, and then how to take the notes that are going to be relevant to your essay. And then finally, how to identify enough major issues to carry your essay, and how to present and elaborate on your solution to those essays. So that's related to essay 4. You really want to make sure that you include a lot of details on your solution. So that is for essay 4, but that's also going to be applicable to essay 5. So that's kind of why we're walking through all these different things today, because it's all things that you need to be doing before you're even tackling actually writing the essay. So let's dive in. Specifically, what you have to read for your essay 5 is the book, The New Urban Crisis. Some of you may have already started it. It's very important that you read that, because it's going to be what you'll be using to form some of the basic ideas for the essay you'll be writing. So your entire paper is going to be kind of built around ideas that you're going to be pulling out from the urban crisis. So that's why you really need to approach the book when you're reading it with your purpose in mind, right? So it's knowing why you're reading helps you know what to read. So in this case, the urban crisis, you're going to be pulling out at least 2 to 3 problems, not more than 2 to 3 problems, discussed in a book that are also occurring in your city. So you're going to be taking those problems, and then in your essay, you're going to be discussing what the problems are, how they originated, how they generally work today in your city. And then the other element you're going to be doing is identifying and proposing a solution to each of those problems that you discuss. So it's very similar to the trash essay, but this is going to be on a much larger scale. And it's going to be involving a lot more research. So before you even do the research, you do need to identify those 2 to 3 problems that you found in the urban crisis that are also happening in your city. So that is why we need to make sure that you take notes relevant to that, right? So before you even start reading the urban crisis, go ahead and read essay 5 prompt, maybe a few times. Because not only is it going to provide you with that purpose, but it's also going to actually give you some ideas of these problems. Your professor, he says you can write about any problem, but he does give a few suggestions with a little bit of blurbs and things to think about, such as housing affordability, traffic and mobility, and segregation. So it's a really good idea to read the prompt, read those blurbs, because that's going to have then in your mind some possible problems that you might be able to identify in your city and use in your essay. So that is why if you read the prompt before you read the book, you're going to have your purpose which is to identify two to three problems. And then you're going to be able to find things like quotes, phrases and examples that you might want to use. You might be able to find possible things that are going to lead you to the research element. So what you want to do is make sure you're taking notes with 2 to 3 problems that you want to identify occurring in your city, and then also potential ideas for your solutions that you do need to do your research in. So as you're taking notes, make little notes. You can do it in the margins. You can have a working document, but make sure that you're not just reading, that you're actively reading, because this book is a very important element to your research essay. Does someone have a question? Okay. So yeah, as noted, when you finish reading your book, you may review your notes and realize maybe you haven't found those 2 to 3 problems. You may need to go in and do additional reading. You may need to zoom in a little bit more, and that's okay. Just give yourself enough time to kind of go through this process. Okay, so how do you know if you've actually accomplished this when you've done reading? There's a few questions that you can write down and make sure that you've gotten them answered. You're going to do yourself a favor by doing this anyway, because it's actually one of your assignments that will happen, I think, in mid-May. So after you've read the book, you need to be able to answer what major urban problems discussed in the new urban crisis are you going to be addressing in your research essay, right? That's a pretty major one. Specifically, which passages and quotes are you going to be using? You need to include the quote, cite the page numbers, and what solutions are you hoping to propose for your problem? What kinds of things do you need to find in your research to get supports for those solutions? So you can see why when you read the book, it shouldn't be passive reading. You need to be actively reading and be ready to have these answers, okay? Because then once you've had these answers established, then you're ready to move on to that next step, which is the research element. Okay, so let's dive into that. Right, so starting a research for a big project can definitely feel overwhelming. So the best way to make it easier for yourself is to set yourself up with a purpose and a mission, right? So now that you've read the book, let's say you're ready to go into research, you feel like I don't even know where to start, you can create a framework. You can address this A, B, and C. Problems that I see in my city, I wish could be fixed. Go ahead and list those out. Those could potentially become keywords for your search. Solutions that I think should be tried in an effort to solve those problems. Again, they don't have to be, solving the world's problems. They're just potential and plausible ideas that you have. There may be issues with the solutions, but you shouldn't discredit it until you've done some research. Maybe there's someone else out there who's written something similar to your ideas, and then you can explore deeper with that research. And then finally, problems from the new urban crisis that I might be interested in writing about. Again, that's to get your brain thinking. Okay, what do they address in the new urban crisis that is also happening in my city? Again, these are going to generate possibly some keywords for you to do your searches in. So now you're going to take those ideas, you're going to create the research, or excuse me, the keywords for your research. And those keywords are actually the way that you might find that golden source. So you might need to kind of test the waters with a couple different kind of ideas and concepts there. And that's okay. We're going to kind of dive in now into how you're actually going to be doing the physical research. So I'm going to go the easiest way to do it is to just type in your search, El Camino Library. Okay, so this first one here is going to take you straight to the page. So I'm going to walk you through a couple different ways to approach your research. And I would recommend trying all these ways because it is going to generate different results. And it is, some people might find that certain ways work better for them than other ways. A good way to just start out your research is the OneSearch. And that's going to look in the entire library. This is useful because it's giving you all the sources, but it can be a little overwhelming because you can end up with literally hundreds of thousands of sources. So that is the downside to it. But it is a good way to kind of get started to get some ideas, and then you'll dive deeper into some other searches we're going to address after this. So let's just go with housing crisis. Let's start with that. Okay, so you're just going to type it in, you're going to search. It will launch you into having to log into your El Camino account, by the way. So I already logged in. Okay, so now as you see, this has brought up 25,000 results, right? So that is a lot of results. What you want to do is narrow it down. Let's say, we know that audio is not one of the sources you are required to have. So maybe you don't want audio, but articles, you could do an article. Maybe you want magazine articles, newspaper articles. You can select any ones you want. You can also just, leave off images. You're not going to need that. Another important one is you want it to be available online. Unless you're planning on going to the library, then you want to be able to access it. Now it has it, you can zoom in on the subjects. You can just pick housing, mortgages. You see there's different recommendations. This is also a good way to get ideas for keywords for your research. Another one I would recommend is your publication dates, because articles from 1800s are not really going to be very helpful for you for this research project, but maybe since 2010. Okay, so let's see how we've narrowed it down. Okay, well, we've cut it down to 15,000. Yeah, we're getting there. You can start to look through it. You can also narrow it down some more if it's still like too many things to go through. Other things to think about are, you only need one additional book besides the New Urban Crisis. So maybe you want to not look at books right now. Maybe you want to only focus on an article, right? So let's just say, look at the title of the article, consider, it provides the dates, consider the dates. Sometimes it gives a little bit of blurb here. Of course, it's available online, which we need. So you can, if you're like, this looks maybe interesting, although in this case, it's not, it's related to London, but I'm just going to click on it just so we can walk through it. Okay, so from here, you can click on the full text. This is the link to the full text that will launch you into whatever site it's housed in. Okay, some cookies. From here, you should be able to, let's see. Okay. I don't even know what this is. All right, this is not a great source. In fact, it doesn't look like the link is working. It looks like it's broken. Let's try a different one. Let's see. Here we go. All right, this is in the Southern California region. This is more related maybe to the topic we're writing about. Okay, so it's housed in several different sites. Let's just try this first one. Let's hope. Okay, so here we go. So here's an abstract. The abstract is very useful because it's going to give you a rundown of what the article is about. So you don't have to spend time reading an article that might end up being not usable. That's what I recommend first. Reading the abstract gives you some keywords. Another thing to look at is length. If it's really long and you don't feel like you want to go through a really long article, maybe it's not the right one for you. Let's see. This one is pretty long. But if you think it's worth it, then I would recommend browsing it, keep looking through it. But the abstract is really where you're going to get a good idea of whether this is going to be something useful for you. Something else to note about sources when you're using them online is if there's a page number. If there is a page number, then you're going to need to include that when you're citing. For example, if you're pulling a quote, you're going to need to reference the page number that quote's from. If there's not a page number, you do not have to worry about it. Okay, so let's just say that, yes, we like this. We are going to go ahead and get ourselves the link. So they have a permalink here, and you can just copy that. You can also email it to yourself. You can even print it if you prefer that. But what I would recommend is, grabbing it somehow, pasting it into a working document. We're going to talk more about what should go in that working document. Another thing is do yourself a favor while you're in here, go ahead and grab the citation. So you don't have to worry about it later. And also if you happen to like the link doesn't work or something, then you can use this citation to find it. So I would go ahead and grab that. Make sure you select MLA 9th edition and just copy that and paste that into your working document as well. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about what you want to capture after you've gone through reading this source. But let's focus right now on finding, a few other sources. But that's generally how the OneSearch works. As you can see, it can be a little overwhelming, but it might be a good way to kind of get you thinking, get the brain working. Let's go into, there's 2 other databases that your professor really recommends. And those can be found in the advanced search. Or actually, never mind, they switched it. It's in the databases, actually, excuse me. So that's going to be found in this link right here. So El Camino has, as you can see, 119 databases that house, all sorts of sources. But your professor specifically recommends this second one, Academic Search Complete. And that houses like academic journals, books, some articles, things like that. But it's a little bit more pared down than the OneSearch. So it might be a little easier to find your sources in here. So let's go ahead and try it. You can just approach it the same way you would approach the OneSearch. We'll start with housing crisis. But as you can see, by the way, as I'm typing it, it was giving recommendations for other searches. So it's very intuitive like that. Take advantage of that kind of stuff. Okay, so again, a little bit less, 6,700 here. Again, on the left, you're going to go ahead and refine your search. An important thing with this source, for this system, is to select full text because you might end up with just abstracts of things, things like that. You want that full text selected. Again, switch your publication dates. Here we go. Let's say you already found your academic journal. Maybe now you're just looking for newspapers. Go ahead and select that. And now here we go, 487 sources. That's a lot less. Okay, so these are all newspaper articles. We know that. The student squeeze, this one's about college housing. That could be interesting to you. Just run through it, see what looks interesting. Again, look at your dates. I believe there's page numbers given on this one, which is also useful. It gives you an idea of how long these are. Go ahead and click on one that looks intriguing to you. The same kind of setup again. It gives a very short abstract, which is really useful because you can all right, yes, I want to dive in deeper. And then the way that you access the actual flow of text on this one is on the left here. You just click that. It comes up as a PDF on these. Okay, so then it's an actual newspaper article. So yeah, you can use this kind of thing. You would want to go through that, read it, see if it's useful. And then if you do feel like this is a good source, you can go ahead and do the same things here. On the left, it has that cite button. It's got that permalink, the email, all the things. You can actually even put this in your Google Drive or your OneDrive. So they make it very intuitive, very easy to use. Okay. Let's see. Some of these you can even listen to, which is nice for some people as well. And okay, so that is one of the databases. The other one is called Opposing Viewpoints. And that's this one, Opposing Viewpoints. So if you go ahead and click on that one. And this one is interesting because the idea behind it is that it's offering both sides to an issue or several sides to an issue. Kind of like a fair and balanced idea here. That is not opening for some reason. It was working earlier. But again, it's a very similar kind of approach where you're going to be refining your search as you go along. You're going to be testing out keywords. This source gives a lot of suggestions for other keywords, or it will say, kind of like you may be interested in this as well kind of option. So I might not be able to show you this one right now, but just know that it's a very similar setup. but it has a lot less sources. It's a little bit more refined. Someone's kind of gone and done the work for you and found these opposing viewpoints. So it is a handy site that you don't get to see right now. Okay. That's okay. I'm just going to try the link one more time just to see what's up. I did just have it open, so it's a little strange. Darn. Okay. Well, I would recommend when you have a chance going around in this library, there are other databases to check out too. Feel free to kind of browse around, use that one search, get comfortable with it. Because then, let me go ahead and pull up. Sorry. Let's dive back into this. Okay. So now, yep, we addressed that. We addressed this. Just finding my spot. That is now angry at me. I apologize. My computer's gone funny. I might have to keep it small. Let me try one more time here. This is the slide we want. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let's say that you found some sources that you really like, you want to use. Okay, now's the time to get those notes. So when you're taking notes from a source, you're not going to do yourself any favors by just copy and pasting the content, right? The only thing maybe you want to copy and paste would be a quote that you might want to use. Otherwise, you really are going to do yourself some favors by putting it in your own words, marking up why this source is relevant to your essay, and maybe how you're going to use it in your essay. Okay, so what I would recommend is having a working document opened as you're going through your research, and then make sure you capture at least these things, but feel free to capture other things. But you want to make sure, of course, that citation that we talked about, but also make sure you mark what kind of publication it is, because you might not remember, you might not remember, was this an article? Was this a website? I don't even remember. I would just write that down because you do have a certain number and types of sources that you need to use for your research essay. And then, of course, make sure, because sometimes those citations can be a little funny, make sure that URL is included also, because otherwise it's not always easy to go back and find a source if you don't have that URL link. I would do a brief summary, think about writing your own kind of mini abstract of the source that's relevant to you, get down those authors' ideas and those arguments that are relevant to whatever you are going to be writing about in your essay. Also, if you see a great quote, or if you see an example that's presented that you want to paraphrase, that's where you want to maybe copy and paste that content. And make a note, this is a perfect quote for solution number 3. Write that note for yourself. Maybe you're going to see some facts and figures. Maybe, I don't know if I'm going to use this or not. Grab it anyway. And also make a note of, the page number that you found it on, and then why it might be useful. Don't just, write down the number. Make sure you give yourself specific information, because once you're going through all these sources, it can be easy to get, where was this? Where was that? You can get lost, confused. So the more thorough your notes are, the better. And then ask yourself questions. Maybe you come across something that you're like, I don't know if this is really related, or I'm not quite sure I understand this. I want to explore this later. Let me just write this down. And then, of course, as you're going through it, your own thoughts and analysis, right? Because that's an important element to your research essay. Does that source actually support your essay, your thesis? Does it help to prove maybe the solution that you're planning on presenting? How does it do it? Why does it do it? And why is it relevant to your essay? And then finally, also important is consider the author's use of evidence or logic of their argument. You've thought about this before. Is this a valid source? Is this source coming from a reliable place? What is their motivation for writing it? Those are important things to think about as well. Okay. Okay, so that covers research. Does anyone have any questions about what we did in the library or anything about those notes? Okay. Okay, so on to basically your professor says, or he said that, you have this essay 4 that you've been working on, you're getting back some drafts, and some things that you will want to focus on possibly fixing in that essay that might be coming up when you're getting it back, or something that you're also going to want to make sure you address in essay 5, are the problem, laying it out properly, and then the solution, and providing enough content for that solution. Okay, so I think what he said he's seen a lot is, maybe you're doing a really nice job of laying out the problem, but then your solution is maybe only a few sentences. So he wants to see you dive deeper on your solutions and proving why they're valid solutions. And also, when essay 5 comes along, backing those solutions up with that research. Okay, so with that said, essay 5 is going to be 6 to 8 pages long, and it's only addressing 2 to 3 problems. So what does that tell us? That you're going to need to be spending a lot of time on those problems and then explaining the solutions, right? So what you really want to make sure is thinking about, if you're laying out the problem, that you can talk about how it originated, how it's working in your city today or not working. You want to find evidence in your research and examples that support its significance and analyze its impact. We were looking in the housing crisis, for example, when we were doing that research just now. Maybe you want to go and dive deep on Los Angeles, or maybe you want to dive even deeper on your city. So you really want to get specific, and you want to talk about how that problem is affecting society today. All right, so that's kind of where you want to go with the problems. Now with the solutions, so each problem that you're going to identify, you're also going to be proposing a solution. So you need to explain how that solution would work. You need to make a case for that, right? You need to present why it's practical and plausible. He specifically says it does not have to be perfect. So you can still find practical, plausible solutions that maybe aren't necessarily going to solve the world's problems, but could address part of the problems that you're seeing. But the important thing is to find the research that's going to support your arguments for those solutions. And then also just note that when you're laying out these solutions, you can't assume that you're just telling the reader what it is and that they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's genius. You really want to lay it out so that, look, these are reputable publications who are also saying this. These are reliable sources. This proves that my solution is a good one because all these other sources also back me up on this. So that's really your goal with laying out the solution. And that's why research is so vital for this essay, because it really needs to prove, why your solution is plausible. Okay. And then I think, yes. Okay, so that covers it all. Does anyone have any questions? I know that we kind of covered a lot here, but the idea is just to get you kind of thinking about what is going to be involved in essay 5, because I know it feels like very long away now, but there are a lot of elements that need to come together. And you do want to give yourself a good amount of time to do that reading, to get that research done, because you might, do all your research and come back and say, you know what, this isn't really coming together for me. Maybe I need to go back and find some different sources. So you want to really allow yourself the chance to kind of, make mistakes, maybe reach a dead end and be able to recover from that, and take it in a different direction. So just something to think about when you're kind of tackling that. All right, let me see. I think we have a question. Yes, I will be providing a copy of the recording. I'll probably send that out later today. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording in case anyone wants to have any questions